Well, Kenta Maeda's stats look impressive yet again. We'll talk about that, the impact that it could have on the roster decision, and we will preview Reese Olson's 2025 season all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Wednesday, March 5th, 2025. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen. Every single day, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Appreciate you all for tuning in. Happy Wednesday, halfway point in the week here. The Detroit Tigers played the Tampa Bay Rays on Tuesday afternoon and lost by a score of 4-1. They are now, I believe, 4-6 and technically 4-6-1 because you're not going to play spring training. You're not going to play extra innings in spring training, rather. So they ended that one game. I think that was a split squad day anyway. Either way, doesn't matter. They are with a 4-6-1 record. As I say all the time, I do not really care about record in spring training. There are plenty of teams in the history of baseball that have been phenomenal in spring and awful in the regular season, and awful in spring and great in the regular season. It's really hard, especially this early in spring. If you want to take a little bit more, maybe out of like the dress rehearsal games that are, the weekend before the opening day, that's the word, goodness, then maybe you can take a little more out of that. But like for the most part, you're really looking at individual performances. Half of these games are played by guys that will not come anywhere close to the major league roster this year and are not even in like the upper level of the minor leagues. So hard for me to really take anyone's record, again, especially this early in the spring, with anything more than a grain of salt. The Tigers, like I said, lose 4-1. I think the biggest story here is the continued progression of Kenta Maeda. And it's odd to say the progression of someone who has been in the majors as long as he is and is of the age that he is. But, given what we saw out of him a season ago, I think it's probably the right word to use. And I think now you are left with a much more intense, I guess is the word, a much more apparent conversation about where he slides into this roster come regular season. There was a lot of different avenues to go off of going into spring, going into camp. Right. I know that I had said if he looks like he did last year, I would probably part ways with him and cut him before opening day. He obviously does not look like he did last year. So I think it's pretty apparent that he is going to make the roster. It's just a matter of which role he kind of takes over. And part of that has to do with how everybody else looks, right? And how his competition, per se, the people that are competing for the same spots as him look. But he has looked velocity wise, stuff wise, so much improved from last year that I think they're going to find a role for him. He's also getting paid 10, 12, whatever it is, $1 million this year. That's not for nothing either. That matters. Whether you like it or not, that does matter with these decisions. That's why Javi's going to be on shortstop at opening day as well. Obviously, not even close to the same amount of money, but you get my point. So Maeda in this outing goes 3 2/3, 1 hit, no earned runs, 1 walk, and 5 strikeouts. That is a 3.12 ERA so far in spring. I think that, that 3.12 ERA, most of those runs are all in one outing. I mean, he's been pretty darn solid. I think this was his third appearance of the spring already, up to almost 4 innings pitched in this game, so already getting stretched out a little bit as well, going deeper into ball games. I think those are all fantastic signs, and the fact that he is able to go the furthest into a ball game he's gone so far this calendar year and keep the velocity up. He was around 91 pretty much the entire time. Now, that is via people that were at the game looking at the scoreboard, because this game not only was not on TV, it was not a part of Baseball Savant on their website either. So we have none of the analytical data from this game. We did not watch any of it because, 2025, we're not technologically advanced enough to have that happen for every spring training game for Major League Baseball. Anyway, I'm not mad about it. I digress, as they say. There were beat reporters that were obviously there and talking about the velocity. Evan Petzold does a great job, as always, with that kind of stuff. So talking a lot about, again, him being around 91, 92. Got a couple of swing and misses on fastballs that were above 90 miles an hour. At this point in the spring, I think that is a fantastic sign. After the game, AJ Hinch said it's still early in camp to start commenting on where guys in the starting rotation, where guys are in the starting rotation competition, other than he's really put himself in a position to be ready for the season. So that is via Evan Petzold of the Freep. I think that's fair as far as, it is early in spring. Fair enough. But I think that it really is kind of getting to a point where we are talking about, is he going to be a long reliever like he was at the end of last season, or has he improved so much and looked so much better that he's going to be starting pitcher 5 on opening day? I think that he has catapulted himself into that conversation. And again, this was appearance number 3. This isn't like an overreaction to one start in the first game of spring training anymore. He has compiled several outings that all have had stuff looked like this. Now, he got popped in the second one, got hit around the yard a little bit, but like the stuff and the velocity continues to be improved, and I think that matters for the organization. I think it probably should. So what to do with Kenta Maeda? I think, for me, I would probably still, if the season started tomorrow, there's still, 3 weeks of spring training left. This will get ironed out, and we'll see how everybody progresses. I think for me, I would probably still have Mize at the 5th spot in the rotation, and I'd use Maeda as a long reliever. Tell him to empty out the tank even a little bit more velocity-wise. He can get you multiple innings. And inevitably, when one of your 5 starters goes down, gets hurt, needs to skip a start in the rotation, etc., you have Kenta Maeda there. Some people talk about 6-man rotation. This organization has been adamantly against a 6-man rotation for years now, ever since the AJ Hinch and Scott Harris era. So I am not going to bank on that. I don't think that's plausible or in the cards here. But I do think that Maeda winning a long reliever spot and then being kind of that Tyler Alexander role for so long, right? The swing man, but also can give you a start here and there as well. And honestly, given the injury consistency that everybody in the Tigers rotation has had throughout their entire careers, really looking at all of them, I think it's pretty safe to say that even if he doesn't make the rotation, he's going to get a handful, if not more than a handful, of starts in 2025. Okay, let's talk about some of the offensive performance from this game. Then we will talk about Reese Olson. We'll do that right after this. Got to talk to you today about our friends over at Wonderful Pistachios. If you're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, you can crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's a perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They are always my go to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in shell options are a classic favorite as well. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We, of course, will be back tomorrow recapping another baseball game by your Detroit Tigers, doing another player preview, and talking about any other news and notes to come out of Tigers camp. I do think we are probably going to have roster projection 2.0 this Friday because the Tigers have an off day on Thursday, so we won't have a game to recap for Friday's episode, but we'll see how the week plays out. So that'll be kind of something cool to look forward to as well, with obviously what we talked about in segment 1, the Kenta Maeda situation being a big factor in some of the changes that we'll probably see from roster projection 1 to roster projection 2. Only other pitcher I want to talk about, Jordan Balazovic, stays hot, has had a pretty solid spring. It's only like 5 or 6 innings of work, but has looked pretty solid in those, and apparently looked good again. We didn't see it because awesome, but got that ERA below 2 in spring training. We'll take that and see. I know a couple of beat writers have done stories on him and kind of his path to get here, so go check those out from all of our great beat writers here. Let's talk about some offense. Trey Sweeney leading off this game. Again, he's done that a lot lately. I think one of the biggest things, he went 0 for in this game, 0 for 3, I believe. Didn't strike out, which I think is a good sign. He has a lot of swing and miss in his bat, so the fewer amount of strikeouts, the better as far as I can see. But, that aside, just him getting this much playing time, I think is noteworthy. Not that it necessarily means he's guaranteed himself a spot on the roster. Not that it's like, Trey Sweeney is leading off and playing every day, so he's going to lead off and play every day and play shortstop when the regular season comes around. But I do think they are trying to figure out what they have in the guys that are playing a lot already. And you see the guys like Riley Green only plays once every 3 or 4 days. Kerry Carpenter only playing once every 3 or 4 days. Colt Keith got a knock in this ball game, not playing every day, right? Torkelson even not playing every day. Like, there are some guys that I think the organization is a little bit more confident about what they have in them. And then there's guys that are playing new positions or being tried out in different roles, and guys that are in positional battles. And of all of those guys, I really do think that somebody like Trey Sweeney, it makes sense to me that he plays so much already. There is a huge difference in roster construction between Javi Baez and Trey Sweeney and Javi Baez and Zach McKinstry. McKinstry's out of options. There's a real chance that if Sweeney makes it, you are missing out or losing, rather, McKinstry permanently. There's also the fact that Trey Sweeney does have options. You can send him down to the minors. He only has, half a season of Major League experience. Like, there are still things that the Tigers organization wants Sweeney to develop in his swing. I just mentioned he still has a ton of swing and miss in his bat. Like, there are still a lot of things that he needs to improve on. Usually you do that when you're a young player in the minor leagues. So, there's a lot of stuff like that, a lot of nuance that goes with that conversation. And roster projection 1, I had Trey Sweeney obviously making the team out of camp, but we'll see how that goes. He did have a homer off of a lefty, not yesterday, but 2 games ago. And I think that that's a good sign. So basically, I bring that up just to say, expect him to continue playing more and keep a close eye on him when the game is on TV once a week, because I think that the organization's keeping a keen eye on him as well. Spencer Torkelson goes 1 for 4 with a strikeout. I think that pretty much everything he does is going to be put under a microscope. I didn't see any of the at-bats because, again, they're not on TV. But I think it is worth noting that he did get a knock in this one. Colt Keith, like I said earlier, stays hot with another hit. The only other thing I want to talk about is the continuation of Ryan Kreidler in center field. I think that's a similar conversation to Trey Sweeney, but I was thinking about it. The fact that Parker Meadows and Matt Vierling are both injured, you have Riley Green, and that's great because Riley Green is really good at baseball and can play center field perfectly fine. No question about it, right? He's done it before. He can do it again. At the same time, your organizational depth at center field, at least in the upper level of the minors, obviously like Max Clark is not walking through that door anytime soon, is a little bit shaky. And when you're down the two guys on the major league roster that can play center field, I think that probably is a direct correlation to why we're seeing Ryan Kreidler get so much playing time in center. Not that he's going to be like the opening day center fielder. Again, you have Riley Green. I'd imagine that if neither of them can play, that's the direction they go. But I think that probably buys Ryan Kreidler some more time on this roster. And if he can start hitting again, might permanently buy him more time. But that seems to be a huge if. He has yet to hit really with any remote success at the major league level in his career. So something to keep an eye out for there as well. Let's talk about Reese Olson. Reese Olson pitched earlier this week. Last season in 2024, he had a 3.53 ERA in 22 starts. That's 112 innings, 101 strikeouts, and a 1.18 whip. The K rate was 21.7, which was in the 39th percentile. His walk rate was 7.1, which was in the 64th percentile. His ground ball rate was 51.4. Incredible there. 86th percentile. He was really good, and he did take a noticeable step forward from what we saw out of him in 2023. Going into 2024, I was not nearly as high on him as A, I am now, but B, just a lot of other people, I think, seemingly were. I mean, going into the year, I very notoriously said that that Reese Olson was not going to make the rotation out of camp and that it was going to be Matt Manning and Casey Mize. Obviously, that looks ridiculous in hindsight, as I'm always good for one of those a year, it seems like, in spring training. But he really proved that he belonged there. And it wasn't just, like, oh, I won the job out of camp and that was just the only reason that I stayed in the rotation. Like, he continuously reproved himself time and time again. A 3.53 ERA for, somebody who's in his basically second season at the major league level is very impressive. Still had some injury stuff to work through, missed some time last year, but that seems to be, I don't know, I don't want to say an inevitability among pitchers in baseball these days, but pretty close to. And so for him to provide what he did in the time that he was on the field, I think was really impressive. We know a lot more about him now than we did at this time last year. We know that his slider is legitimately an elite pitch. I think that it has the potential to be one of the more effective sliders in baseball. A 143 average against and a 194 slug against. Threw it to both lefties and righties and was his most thrown pitch total. 45.5% whiff rate. Slider had a +8 run value, according to Baseball Savant. I could throw a lot of different, stats at you. Hard hit rate, 33.8%. That's pretty darn low. K rate, just strike rate, 29.5% on one pitch. Phenomenal stuff. So that he has that weapon and can utilize it. Again, this is one of the reasons why he's so valuable in my eyes is his best pitch is a breaking ball that he can throw to both handedness. 196 average against the slider for lefties in 2024. That is unbelievably impressive. So he has that at the top, and that's probably going to be the pitch he throws the most. This last year, he threw it 28% of the time. The next highest was his fastball, which has been a big point of controversy for me on this show. 24% of the time, then changeup 22%, sinker 20%, curveball 6%. So that makes up his repertoire. The fastball really is, to me, the only thing standing in his way from being a legitimate top end of the rotation caliber pitcher. I genuinely believe that. This is a guy that if he can figure out how to have his fastball be far more productive than it was or than it has been really just period so far in his major league career, you're talking about a guy that really could get into the upper echelon of pitchers, but that is a big if because he has not done that consistently so far at the major league level. We'll talk about that and more right after this. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. So we're talking about Reese Olson's fastball before the break there. Last year had a run value of 0, a 282 batting average against his four-seam fastball, a 398 slug, and those numbers are even quote-unquote lucky from what the math says they should have been. Expected batting average of 292 and slug of 460 against that pitch. Only a whiff rate of 10%. That's very low considering the amount of swing and miss this kid has in his arm. That is the thing that if he were to get whiffs on his fastball and just more strikes in general on his fastball, these numbers like 75th percentile in whiff rate, again, below league average in K rate. That is wild considering the stuff he has. Is it not? Like that? This guy has elite spin, elite stuff, and doesn't even strike out hitters at a league average clip. There's no reason that should be the case. So I really do think that is why I am so optimistic about him this season, is because so far in spring training, the velocity has been way up on that fastball. We're talking 96, 97. Hopefully we can get some legitimate readings on it soon. I want to see if it has more drop, more vertical break, what the spin is on it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because I think if it is legitimately a refined and improved pitch, that we could see a massive step forward taken from Reese Olson. And again, even the balls that were put in play last year were kept on the ground. 86 percentile in ground ball rate, as I said before the break there. A lot of that has to do with him utilizing his sinker against lefties. And if you don't have a four-seam fastball that is going to consistently get you strikes and swings and misses, then you better keep the ball on the ground. And he absolutely did that, which is one of the reasons why he was so successful a year ago. That sinker did him absolute wonders in that regard. It kept the ball off the barrel too. He gets hit like relatively hard. Bottom 12% in the league in hard hit rate, bottom 16% in the league in average exit velocity. But if it's spiked into the ground, who cares? I think a lot of people, because his fastball was so hittable, were able to sit on that pitch. And if that is, again, something that he adjusted and changed going into this year, and we might see a really good fastball out of him, then, as I've said 5 times now, I think a big step forward could be in order here, which would be awesome. Obviously, the changeup, really effective as well. I absolutely love his changeup. He has the stones to throw it to righties. Righty changeups is a relatively rare thing. He doesn't care. 222 average against and a 43% whiff rate from the changeup a year ago. He's so good. And I think the two biggest things, I'll save you the repetitiveness of talking about the fastball for like a 7th time here. But I think the other thing is, again, very simply, how many innings are you going to get out of him? Not that he's ever going to be like a 210 inning workhorse type of guy, but if we can even get to the 140 to 150 innings pitched mark with him this season, I think that you're going to see that value skyrocket as well. Keeps the ball in the strike zone, doesn't walk guys. Doesn't give up a ton of extra base hits. Just fantastic. And the adjustments he made from 2023 to 2024 were stellar. And I'm expecting some more adjustments here for the still only 25-year-old Reese Olson from 2024 to 2025. As far as his withstanding in the organization, I think he's pretty comfortably the third starter. He's not going to be ahead of Scooble. He's not going to be ahead of Flaherty. That being said, he is comfortably ahead of whoever they put behind him, at least for this season. That's not to say, Jackson Jobe has the ceiling of like a true ace, obviously, but to start off the year, this is Jobe's rookie season, even though he debuted last year. Reese Olson's going to be a more prominent fixture in the rotation than him. He's certainly going to be more than Maeda or Mize or Alex Cobb or whoever is added to the rotation there in the back half in late March, early April. So I am really excited about Reese Olson. I think that a lot of the rotation's success, you could even say, kind of hinges on him. Not to say that, I'm not trying to put the weight of the world on the third guy in the rotation's shoulders here, but the third guy in any rotation really determines a lot. That is the difference between having a 1-2-3 in a 3-game series where you have 3 really good pitchers, or kind of there's a fall off after 2 games, or the difference between having, these are our bottom half of the rotation guys, and it's your 3, 4, 5. They're not as good as your top end guys, versus, we just have 3 top end guys, and we're going into a weekend series where number 3 is pitching day 1, right? Like that it really is kind of the swing spot in a 5-man rotation because it's right in the middle there. So I think that his value will determine a lot of the starting pitching success this season and kind of how it's viewed throughout the year. A little bit of a shorter episode today, but that's pretty much all I got for you. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We, of course, will be back tomorrow talking again about spring training baseball, doing more player previews, and talking about any news and notes to come out of Tigers camp. We should have our first set of quote-unquote cuts coming pretty soon here. The guys aren't obviously all cut completely out of the organization, but we should have roster trimming probably starting here pretty soon. I don't think it'll be a huge number, but you'll probably see 5, maybe even up to 8 or 9 guys, told that they're not going to make the opening day roster by the end of the week here. So we'll keep an eye on that too. All right. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all tomorrow, baby. Go Tigers.